You've connected to Cisco Unplugged.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cisco Unplugged. I'm Dan Klamert, your host, and this week on episode 55, we're going to be discussing Wi-Fi 7 tails, real-world upgrades, challenges, and deployment lessons from the field. So I would like to first here welcome back to the show, Al. How are you doing, Al?
Good. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks.
excited to do this with Jim. So that looking
Yes.
forward to what we learned today.
Yeah, and we've had Jim, I think, a little bit through interviews with Cisco Live and whatnot on the show before. So I would like to welcome our special guest today, Jim Florwick. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking me to come out and play with you guys today.
Dan. Jim said he's a busy guy, right? Jim's a really busy
Yes.
guy, and fortunate. I love that we can both call him not only a colleague but a friend. But
Yes.
so he agreed to spend a little bit of time with us, and he told me, he said, "I only have time for one cup of coffee this morning," so I brought a right-sized coffee mug for the occasion.
Send me a link to that.
That's a good one. I've got a special story. I remember. I don't know if Jim, if you remember this. I didn't tell you this before the show, but back when I want you to introduce yourself when we get going here. But Jim was with a company called Cognio a while back, and Cisco acquired Cognio. I believe I want to say like 2007 timeframe. Also, the time, yeah, that I was newer to Cisco. So I was coming out to San Jose for a company meeting, and I the day I first met Jim Florwick was on a rental car bus, and we were coming in from the airport, and I recognized him getting on the bus. I said hi, and to Al's point, ever since that day, I was kind of a newer SE at Cisco at the time, and pretty green. And I've learned so much from Jim over the years. I just want to say thanks for being a great colleague and friend as well. So, you've never, not been there when I've needed to reach out to you, whether it's customer challenges or issues. You always do pick up my phone calls, and I really appreciate that. So thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Jim.
Dan. I
Yeah.
got to tell you, my association with you guys it completes the circuit. I don't get any feedback from the field unless you guys call, and you call with good questions all the time. I don't know why we wouldn't all get along together like that. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. It's a very profitable relationship for everybody. And besides that, you're just really nice guys, and I enjoy speaking to you. So
And so Jim is really humble too as well. So I would say he's one of the foremost RF experts here at Cisco. He's a great resource when it comes to all things RF. So before we get into the episode, which we're really excited about, just wanted to again remind everyone, if you have questions, we do take questions via Slido. You see the QR codes up there on the screen, hopefully, and you also will have the link under the YouTube video. I am monitoring the YouTube video, the YouTube chat as well. So if that doesn't work for you, that one or the other, you can pop your questions in there, and we'll answer those either live on the show or in the chats. But so we are live, streaming live and recording on YouTube. YouTube.com/@GetUnplugged is the channel. Go out there, please like and subscribe. You will be notified when we do go live with new great content like this. And we do have some great stuff coming up here with Cisco Live around the corner and other things too. So with that, I think it's time to get unplugged here. So Jim, could you tell us a little bit more about your background to kind of get started here?
Whew. Well, from the time the earth cooled or till the time I re-entered well,
keep in mind we like to keep the episodes shorter, so
yeah.
No.
The abridged version is I got started in the Navy on aircraft and radar and weapon systems. Prior to that, I was replacing front end car parts, and I really liked mechanicking. And then some Navy recruiter told me, "Hey, radar has a spark plug," and I thought, okay. So, plus, they wanted it for targeting and cool stuff. So that kind of how I got started, and then jumped into it. I was with NCR for a number of years, which became AT&T, and then I kind of spun out into some startups when this whole Wi-Fi thing kind of was really kicking up. Did a lot of deployments, and then we started really looking at wireless as being viable. And that was 2005 when I joined Cognio, because I was like, well, if we're going to do it on Wi-Fi, we're going to need tools. So we went and made those, and then I got to Cisco, and it's been an amazing journey. It's what a great industry. I've never seen a technology grow and advance as fast as the wireless technologies have. Maybe AI, we don't know.
Exactly.
But yeah, then if you'd asked me if we were doing 5 gigabits per second over the air on one Ethernet point, I'd have told you there's no way. No way we're going to get it. So thankfully, I've been consistently wrong.
Well, that's why we had you on the show today.
Well, I'm not going to hurt you if you are wrong. I promise you that.
Well, that's for our viewers to find out where you're wrong and where you're right. So that's right. We'll let them.
Yeah. If you're clear on where you're wrong and where you're right in wireless, you're probably doing it wrong.
Exactly. It depends.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is your role today then at Cisco? What are you doing these days?
Today, it's really, well, I'm still trying to not grow up, but that's it's been getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
We're at a really cool inflection point. I think that the market's changed. What we're asking of wireless has changed. What people are willing to do with wireless and how much they're willing to know about it has changed. I tell people all the time, I said, when I talk to customers, wireless is not amazing to them. It's like walking into a room and flipping a light switch. The light goes on, big deal. And it turns off. But if the light doesn't go on, then it all gets real noisy real fast, right?
Yeah.
And it has gotten to the point where it is utility and expected. And man, I love when you go into a university, everybody's like, yeah, there's Wi-Fi. Why wouldn't there be, right? It's like, oh, I know a lot of reasons why there wouldn't be. But they don't happen as much now. So my role here has grown with that. We've got a lot of young folks coming into and they've got tremendous skills I don't have, right? And skills we're absolutely going to need.
Sure.
And I facilitate a lot now, conversations on how we move forward with a product. So I get to spend a lot of time giving input to the product and working through some of the questions. And they're great questions. We got a lot of interesting questions right now. So we're busy. You might have noticed we collapsed two architectures, and now if you look at the org chart, pretty much all the right pieces are reporting to all the right people. So it's been very busy up here. I'm really happy with the product we have coming out right now, and we have been like the duck churning under the surface for a couple of years, and you can just wait. We've got a rollout coming out here. So I think things are exciting and keeping me fresh and happy to wake up and do it every single day right now. So, and I'm just amazed at the quality of the talent that we have in the industry, and the questions that we get to answer now. So it's a cool time.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, yourself included, definitely there. Yeah. We're lucky to have such great talent here. I agree with that. So
yeah.
Thank you. So I guess, before when we were talking about the show here, we talked about some, I guess, key considerations, preparing your network for Wi-Fi 7. I know you're working on a blog that should be due out here soon, I believe.
I just approved the final. Yeah, it should be next week, I'm guessing.
Okay. So, we'll keep our eyes open for that here on Cisco Blogs. But I guess we can kind of talk a little bit about some of those, I guess, give a sneak peek about some key considerations here for Wi-Fi 7, what you're seeing, what you're hearing out there. I know you're involved in a lot of these large customer deployments when it comes to high density, the latest and greatest cutting edge. I know our Cisco EME, live EMEA, those types of things. So what are you seeing out there as far as considerations?
So I think people need to understand that the Wi-Fi standards since Wi-Fi 6 and since we got OFDMA have really been additive. They have not been introducing major new concepts. I think that the architecture for Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 8 were really kind of written about the same time we did Wi-Fi 6. And these were things that couldn't be accommodated in Wi-Fi 6, but they're things that OFDMA enabled, right? And the ability of the radios to do more enabled. So the standards now are growing one upon the other, right? So if you don't have 6 gigahertz now, right, and you're not planning on that, you're going to miss out on a lot of this. And a couple of things that have happened, right? We've got 5 and 6 radios on an AP now when you start talking about IoT and sensors and everything else, and the power budget for these things has gone up. And I'm still seeing folks out there that are saying, well, we've got, AT switches, right? Or, can't do the upgrade. I know, in fact, there were a couple of agencies with older buildings, campuses, that had to wait on heavy ups for a building because they just couldn't put more power into their switch closets based on the old infrastructure. So those are things that you have to think about. Now, we make it pretty easy for Cisco to continue because we understand you're not going to be able to upgrade everything, all in the same week. It would be great if you could do that. And everybody's got that nuisance or that budget item that they just can't get to because we keep having other things.
Sure.
Power is really important here because you're not going to get any of the benefits. And we are doing uplink, downlink, MU MIMO like a banshee now. I mean, it works. And what we're seeing is a high density of Wi-Fi 6 clients. We went to Cisco Live. 87% of the clients on the network were Wi-Fi 6 or better. And then we had AC below that. There was no end, right? So and that's a tech market. But the clients are out there and the experience is so different than if you grew up with Wi-Fi. You look at this and this stuff is amazing now. It just works, right?
Yeah.
So those are important things, but they're made by spatial streams. And when you start giving up power, you start giving up radios and you start giving up spatial streams, and you're going to wind up with a better radio working with better clients, but you're not going to get any of the benefits that really break you out of the use cases that you're stuck in now and you occasionally overstress the network with, right?
Yeah.
So power's one, speed's the other one. Port speeds. Boy, if you ratchet an AP down to 1 gigabit per second, it'll handle it. It does it just fine with queuing and things like that. But what you see a downgrade of the video stream that you're pulling, or you see a downgrade if too many members get on because it can still only pass you a gig per second, right? And all of us have done tests in the lab, and you're like, why would you ever need more than a gig a second? It happens when you got 2 4, 2 5s, and a 6 gigahertz radio going all at the same time. It's bursty stuff. It happens all the time. You go over a gig, right? And it's not hard to go over a gig now. It's actually surprisingly easy. I think the first time we went into the lab and I was a huge disbeliever was back in 2020. And they were like, you have to sell M-Gig ports. And I was like, can we drive it? Right? We're all looking at the show side and the casual stuff. We're like, who would need this, right? Which is why I've been wrong all these times, Al, because apparently somebody and if you don't
eventually the math catches up with you.
So infrastructure is really important to look at now, right? The other thing I will say is high signal to noise ratio benefits everything, and isolation of those APs is key. So you do have to pay attention to how you're placing them. And boy, I'll tell you what, if you put a little bit of care into placing it, I don't know if anybody's looked at any of the AI auto planners that are out there now. And I've long not been a fan of an AI auto planner because they said it long before it was like realistic. And the challenge that I find with them, if you ask them too complex of a question, you can mess them up. And one of my favorite tests was used to say, hey, I'm going to do location. And then I'd watch them double the number of APs and put a ring of APs all the way around the wall because that's what you need for location, right? No, no, now I can't run Wi-Fi, right? So it's not a free-for-all. So if you're going to do anything like that, consider that. Consider the last time that you've updated your infrastructure. What were the questions that infrastructure solved? And make sure that you're really getting the best out of your infrastructure, that you're not creating things. We tell people all the time, because we've got dual markets, right, where we've got people who build and do site surveys and these things, those engineering studies are critical. If your network is critical, those engineering studies are critical, and you won't know what you didn't find out until it bites you, right, if it's that critical. So I would never take away from that. But the AI auto planner for a simple network these days, we're teaching it pretty good stuff, and it does do a good layout. And I promise you, it'll do a better layout than you will with a napkin with your floor plan sketched and a few dots with a pen. So planning is important. And then that brings us up to client choices and solutions and selections. 6 gigahertz, we've got to get into that. One of the things that I find is still a sticking point, and I say it now at every Cisco Live and every chance I get to speak, and I'll say it now because I'm speaking. Walk up to the elephant in the room that is WPA3, and I want you to put your arm around its neck and whisper in its ear and make good friends with that elephant, because it is not going away. It is simply going to prevent you from growing into the future. So that is usually a big bite off. People worry about client readiness. Look, client readiness across the industry right now is in variable state because we're growing, right? SP is a fine example. SP Power and LPI Power, the difference between them, clients got confused when we released SP Power. This is nothing new. New standards. People see shall, they say, may. Different vendors make different. Cisco's got a really good relationship with several of the key vendors, and we are working together on these things, and we catch a lot in the labs. The stability over just the last 6 months of all of these technologies has improved. So those are things you want to be thinking about if what you're looking for is the promise of Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 8, right? And we've all got those people that are like, I don't care about riding a city bus, which is the normal daily job of the office network, right? I want to run a drag strip. Okay, so if you want to get there, these are the things that have to be solved for to get there. But if you do that, it's super easy. And I'll tell you, I think probably looking at the specifications and standards, and I heard a lot of this at WLPC. I don't want to freak anybody out yet, but boy, there's a lot of thought going on right now about how will we design networks in the future to take advantage of all these things, because there's some really cool things coming out in the specifications. So that's it. I hope that didn't sound like a horrible laundry list, but if you're practical going in, those are the things you're thinking about.
Have you seen any statistics on like clients that can support 6 gigahertz now? Is it anything?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, between last year and this year, the certifications have gone through the roof. Yeah, no, 6 gigahertz support is out there. We just at Cisco Live EMEA, which is a tech heavy show, that was the end of January. I was shocked. 27% of the clients in there had 6 gigahertz capability. Of course, you can see that with any Wave 2 AC, AP, or forward on DNAC. We're tracking client capabilities, so we can see 6 gigahertz in the capabilities there. And there's actually a widget under the Wi-Fi 6. It used to be the Wi-Fi 6 and 6E widget. But you can actually see how many clients are on your network, and you can see where they're at. That's a great little widget. I don't know if you've ever looked at that one.
Yeah.
We're seeing them out there where the penetration's
that makes it significant now, right? I mean, it's not like it's a few percentage of your network, right? It's close to a third of your network now that can take advantage of this, right?
Yeah, so, and keep in mind the other thing too, if you've still got 802.11n clients on your network, you need to get rid of those. You need to find them and quit making decisions that benefit them. If they're that critical, then they shouldn't be holding your multi-million-dollar advancements in infrastructure back, and they do. So,
well, and that's what's great about 6 gigahertz, right? Is who cares?
You're not going there.
If you're on 6 gigahertz,
you're not going there.
Yeah, those guys can have all they want at 5 and 2.4, right? It's like, so, but all the more reason to get 6 gigahertz.
As far as 6 gigahertz goes, and I'll end on 6 gigahertz with this. There's a tremendous amount of confusion out there because it has been very complicated, and all of the use cases people are used to supporting traditionally in 5 gigahertz can't be supported globally. But even if you just look at 5 gigahertz, I've heard a lot of complaints about, I'm doing a global deployment and this thing is it's a rocky road out there. Well, we've made the hardware so that we know the difference, and you can deploy what you can deploy, and it's still better to have more bandwidth than not enough bandwidth. But if your concern is keeping an equitable experience between all of your offices, that's hard to do right now, right? You can make some suffer if you want, but we're working as hard as we can. 20% of my time right now is spent with government affairs folks, discussing the state of 6 gigahertz out here, and I apologize.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I left the sound on that. Did you hear it?
We did. You're in demand.
It does that a lot. I usually pick it up. I hope that wasn't you, Dan or Al. You very nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a word in edgewise here. Yeah. So.
Go ahead, man. For sure. I'll give it back.
We do have a couple. We have a question actually here, and we actually have a comment from one of your super fans too, and saying that it's great to have Jim on the show today. So there you go. That's good to hear. And then there is a question about AR VR. So are you seeing much on AR VR out there and lots of talk about it, but the building requirements for it are still elusive.
Ooh, well, there's a technology that's also in flux, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
has anybody been to zero latency? You have to go to zero. Look up zero latency.
Okay.
If you're close
Okay.
to one, go do
I have
this. It is
not.
a VR game. I got to play it while we were down in Melbourne, right? Which is where they're based. They're actually based Brisbane, I want to say. I could be wrong on that. And zero latency, if you're watching this, please don't shoot me. It was a really rough trip that fall. Okay. But it was definitely on the other end of that plane.
Send your hate mail to Jim Florwick at Cisco.com.
And the game, in the middle of the day, we stepped in and we put on VR goggles, and they had to go, and they had done so much amazing stuff. Like you couldn't get close to another player, your entire screen would go red. So they thought through a lot of these problems. And then we played the game. I got to tell you, 6 minutes. We went through a demo game, 6 minutes of shooting aliens. I was a happier individual. I just had so much immersive fun in that game. And we were in there with 8 guys, and they were running it across 4 APs. So they're doing a lot of alignment with drivers and talking with their manufacturers. So there's a tremendous amount of technology being developed around it. And I like to say right now, man, we've got all this bandwidth. Everybody's like, who would ever need this bandwidth? Well, you just wait. You remember this industry when we were all sitting around waiting for the killer app.
Yep.
We are sitting around waiting for the killer app again. Can you imagine life without wireless now? There was a time when we thought, who would ever need this?
Yeah, you put it in the conference room, maybe, that's maybe in the lobby. That's, it's
maybe in the lobby. And then first thing you find out is everybody at the train station's on your AP and you shut it off, right? So yeah, I really think, and there's some really good use cases, and we see them all the time, the training and the actual being able to remote supervise people or be able to remote help people. I tell people all the time, if I could walk through a building with a pair of VR goggles on, I don't care whether I'm really there or I'm not there. If I can just see it, we can usually think something through and figure out what's really elusive here, right? But sometimes you just have to see things, put your hands on them, or get a spatial sense of them. So yeah, VR, AR is coming along. And I do think we're going to have practical applications entering soon. I see a lot of it in manufacturing. Medical is huge right now. But industry is adopting it. Manufacturing is very, very busy these days.
Yeah, I feel like a couple of years ago, maybe already, it was at Live. We had some, I don't know if it was at our booth or some other booths there, like a VR or AR. You could kind of see and model up, some new equipment, new switches and stuff, other stuff. I think that there was, I forget, but.
Careful, your younger audience is doing VR and AR all day long with them
That's
goggles
true.
on video games, right?
That's
So
true. That's true.
people are using it. They're just not doing it in offices yet where we can justify that just yet. But it's coming. I do see it. There's a lot of promise there.
So Jim, let me ask you a question about something I think relatively near and dear to your heart. AIRM.
Yes, sir.
Are there conditions where you wouldn't use AIRM today? I mean, it's been out there for a while now. It's been fairly mature. I realize maybe they're, if you're using directional antennas that don't talk to each other or something like that, right? So RM is kind of broke in general from something like that. But in general, is there anything you wouldn't use AIRM for?
At this point, Al, I'm ready to try AIRM on just about anything because it surprised me so many times and how it worked out the solution, right? We've got a lot of traditional knowledge about how to manually configure a network so that it doesn't blow up, and we like to pretend that we have context of that network and its needs 24 hours a day and how it reacts to everything. And really, all we ever get is glimpses into that and a general sense of it. So AIRM does do an amazing job in places. One of the things I lamented is I taught so many people how to use RF profiles, right? I got people that won't turn it on because they just will not let go of those RF profiles, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do more than one today on a DNAC. You can, by the way, on the MR stack. MR stack will use those RF profiles right in place.
Nice.
And I will warn you about that. MR will use those RF profiles sitting in place. So consider that if you're going that way. But no, there's some situations where I would be shocked if we continued to use it, but we're always exposing it now. What it learns is very, very useful to the engineers, and they start asking better questions. So no.
Yeah.
No, a Super
What
Bowl,
about
maybe,
s-
probably not
Yeah.
right now. And we're just starting to get into some stadium and some of the more complex environments. But carpeted office space, universities, we've got a ton of universities on it now and a lot of carpeted office space. So the adoption rates keep going up.
And just for the viewers, and a quick commercial here too. So AIRM, we've got several back episodes on this, but actually next episode we've got Vishal, who is one of the architects of AIRM on the episode
One of the
or on the show.
Godfathers.
The Godfather. Yeah, there you go.
Vishal built me. We grew up together, and I don't know if you remember when we did the first a first study at University of Texas down at Charles Spurgeon and William Green and those guys. That great guys. They were so wonderful. We were talking to them. They were looking at lighting lecture halls, and they sat at the table and they said to me, "What's going to work best? Antennas under the floor, antennas from the side, antennas overhead?" And I said,
Yes.
"Yeah." They said, "Which?" And I said, "I don't know." And they said, "Well, why don't you know?" And I said, "I can't get 500 people to sit in a room eating pizza and work on a laptop long enough for me to test and measure the outcomes of this." And they
I
went
mean,
to
you've got a
dinner
lot
with-
of friends, but you know.
we re-met with them the next morning, and they came in the morning and they said, "So we were talking at dinner last night. Turns out we're an educational facility, and we have people who will sit still and use the Wi-Fi really long." I like, keep going. And so Vishal was the engineer that went down there with me, and I put him through about 2 days of testing there. The first night, I remember we were coming back into the hotel about 1 a.m. He says, "Do you guys go like this every day?" And I said, "Oh yeah." And then we sat down and processed the data, right? So he's been there for the whole thing, and we together have had the ideas. He's brought them to life. All right, I just can tell him what's wrong. He comes up with how we make that right and do it safely. But yeah, he's a good guest for you to talk to, and that is the guy you want to talk to about how they think about these things, because it's a lot deeper than I can even relate. So
So also now as you're doing Wi-Fi 7, right? So obviously Wi-Fi 7 now, you got to have WPA3, all that sort of stuff, right? But features and functions, you know, we get these new features like puncturing. We got, you know, we kind of had the uplink multi-user MIMO, downlink multi-user MIMO. Should I turn those on? I mean, should customers be turning those on by default? Should we, you know, how would you typically, what's kind of the starting location for that? I mean, there's always corner cases, I'm sure, but
that's always slippery ice, you know that, right? Because you know, people like to believe, you know, I'm just another carpeted office, right? But you know, when we start talking about wireless, snowflakes are all white and cold, but they're all unique and individual too, right? And that the user mix and the client mix and the mission mix that you've got in a particular location may or may not support BE functions, right? But that's an easy control, right? You can turn that on or you can turn that off. And if you spend a little time, you can get really good information back about what's not happening. And it's usually a client that's puking on something, or a client that didn't implement something and needs a driver update, you know, as we're familiar. So if you have a good sense of your client mix across your organization, I would do a test. I mean, that's just career smart, right? And see how it goes in a pilot location, and learn what you need to learn about. We got surprised at Cisco Live. So we had 40 megahertz in Cisco Live Europe. We had 40 megahertz, 6 gigahertz advertising in the Whisper suites. And then you stepped off to non-directional antennas that were running 5 gigahertz, and Apple updated their code. And finally, and we thank you, Apple. Apple says, look, if you've got 2 channels linked up together and giving me 40 megahertz over here, even if you're lower signal, you're better than over here. And they even took the signal to noise ratio. Well, the complaints we started to get was, oh, we're getting sticky roaming when we walk back into the hall. Fine, you get 20 megahertz back. Right. So little things you got to get to the root of. But there's a lot of things that are going to change as we get into these standards. And we're talking right now, you know, with 320 megahertz supercells and Wi-Fi 8 controls, who knows if we're not going to go back to making super channels and managing where the clients connect if we can do it right. So it's a slippery question. I wouldn't say don't do it. It's easy to manage. I would say absolutely try it and learn what you need to learn, because somebody's going to ask you that question if they haven't already, right? And that's what you want to be up with, I think.
Gotcha. Okay. What about, you mentioned 6 gigahertz. What are you seeing as, and you may have to do this sort of based on regions or something, but what are you seeing typically as deployment bandwidths for that? Is that?
Well, yeah, anybody that only got 500 megahertz, we're recommending 40 megahertz tops, because that's manageable. And that's always with the caveat. You know what? If you really know what you're doing, you know your environment, you can get away with more than that. We all, but I'm not going to say try it, because then you break it and you get mad at me, right? In US, there's no reason not to do 80. 80 is the barrier to a gig. And that gig is not going to be your throughput. That gig is going to manage a lot of traffic going across there with very low latency is what the outcome of that's going to be. And that is where we need it to be for the applications, right? So we're constantly involved in efforts to bring more spectrum into some of those regions. And there's constantly proposals going up and looking very good. We've also seen other things come into 6 gigahertz. There's a big push. You mentioned AR, VR right now in the industry to start using some of that space for that. So the future's bright. I'm not going anywhere. This has gotten real interesting.
Cool. So, Dan, you go ahead. I was just asking real quick, Dan, is there anything else on the questions that we need to?
Yeah.
Well, with Wi-Fi 7, I was going to say, pay attention. There's a little feature in Wi-Fi 7 called MRU, which is one of my secret favorites. It looks like it's innocuous, but what that did is it just lets me, instead of sending a frame with a pad, it lets me use the same user's RU twice. I can add them to 2 RUs now and it made a huge difference. In our testing, we're looking at latency control improved by almost 30% by just that little efficiency kicking in there. So get bold, experiment, know what you got, and keep putting in better Wi-Fi.
you have to be Wi-Fi 7 capable to support that particular feature.
You do,
right?
That's Wi-Fi 7 period. And density of clients that were Wi-Fi 7 clients, I was surprised at Cisco Live with it being this early in it. We saw about 7% up there that were on there. And there's some questions. It's some early stuff. I'm not sure we're detecting everything correctly, but it's coming. It's definitely coming.
Awesome. Okay. Good tip.
Nice.
and if you're not Wi-Fi 7, it doesn't hurt you, right?
No, that's hurt you here.
It's one of those.
No, you get into 6 gigahertz. Life is better.
Yeah. No harm, no foul there.
Nope.
You might pick up some advantages. So, Dan, is there anything on the question and answer? Anything? I've been sort of taking up all the time.
No, that's okay. These are good questions. Yeah. So I don't see any additional questions, but is there anything else, Jim, you wanted to cover, or any other stories to share?
No.
I took some notes here, some highlights here. So, power, got to make sure that between, the Wi-Fi 7 and, oh boy.
Did you get one?
I'm guilty too of getting a call here.
Well, we didn't hear it, so that's good.
You didn't hear it. Okay, great. All right, perfect. So, with Wi-Fi 7, APs, more radios, all that stuff, we've got AI in the data centers drawing power. So I've heard that we need to get some more hamsters on the wheel. Basically, that's what I heard there. Got that. And then infrastructure planning is important. Client choices, 6 gigahertz being here, WPA3. I heard that the city bus is efficient. It's maybe not flashy, but it gets the job done. Gets it from
that's the
point A
one
to
that
point
gets you in
B.
trouble.
Nobody likes taking the bus always, but hey,
Nope.
it gets the job
No,
done.
but when the bus don't get where it's going, that's when everybody gets mad. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the exception, the rule more so. But anyways, update your client drivers. That's an important one always. It's just, be career smart. I like that one. That's a good one. Yeah. beats the alternative. And then of course, the 80 megahertz wide channels in the US and 40 if you're constrained elsewhere worldwide. But thank you so much, Jim. Let me make one more check here. It looks like we're good on questions, but
Excellent. Well, thank you.
yeah, thanks so
always
much for
enjoy these
joining the show.
conversations, Dan.
What was
Al,
that?
I said I always enjoy our conversations. Both
Likewise.
ways.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah.
likewise.
We
Yeah.
had some great conversations before the conversation. About
Exactly.
the way back times.
Hey, look, I'll tell you what, I don't know that I remember a more interesting time in wireless. I really don't.
Yeah.
It is
True.
amazing in the directions it's growing right now. And there's someone here who keeps thinking I probably, should spend a little more time on the other side of the camera and maybe here. And I keep thinking, yeah, what part of this am I going to give up?
Yeah.
A lot of cool things that were the stories of dreams
Yeah.
years ago. So
Well, hopefully I run into you out at Cisco Live. Hopefully we can
I hope
catch
so.
up there. And
that's going to be beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Thanks so
looking forward
much
to
for
Diego.
Thanks so much for being on the show, Jim. And hopefully we'll have you back. And then also, I guess as thank you to our viewers for checking out today's episode. Again, as a reminder on YouTube, youtube.com/@SymbolGetUnplugged. Go out there, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You'll be notified when we do go live with additional content. Like I mentioned, next week on AIRM, and then we've got some additional stuff coming up on best practices in the cloud and wireless. And of course, we'll be live out at Cisco Live, so we hope to see some of you out there as well. But you can always reach out to us too via your account team, your Cisco account team. They know how to get a hold of us. You can also send us an email to the show, getunplugged@cisco.com. Reach directly, DM via Twitter X, Unplugged 80211, or on Threads, Unplugged Connectivity. So thank you very much. Thanks, Al. And until next time, stay connected and unplugged.